We are going for the clock in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for stopping by, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. You guys are in for a treat tonight. I got my friend Kent coming in from Canada. He is an hour behind me, so he's over in the mountains. I have had people from Great Britain. Pirate, you're watching? I've got some rum and Coke. Rum mostly. I mean Coke mostly. We got some rum in honor of Pirate watching. But anyway, it's been an exciting week. I was able to head out to the Republican Minnesota Grand Old Party, the Republican convention. It was only about 30 miles away from me in my kind of in my stomping grounds. Yeah, if you haven't had a chance, especially if you're on Facebook, find me. I streamed many of the speeches that the gubernatorial candidates were giving on Saturday, and it was a crap show. I'm telling you that right now, ladies and gentlemen. I've been warning people for a while that both the parties are pretty corrupt, but the Minnesota GOP is pretty bad, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted. I've only had one drink, was a little bit of rum in it, and I'm already slurring. It's a bad sign, or it's just the way it is, right? It was not a good show on Saturday in Rochester, Minnesota for the GOP. They walked away with a candidate that has now received the endorsement, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I have a video on Rumble showing the double standard corruption, and I also was able to interview Matt Burke. He was a pretty highly popular Minnesota Viking, so a professional football player, and he gave me a few minutes. He is the endorsed candidate for lieutenant governor under Dr. Scott Jensen. We're in works to get them on. At least one, if not both of them, on to talk. Pretty frankly, I've been pretty hard on Scott Jensen. Very hard, actually, on a few situations with Scott Jensen, and I was able to meet with Dr. Jensen, Scott, very briefly during the convention, and said, "Hey, if you get the nomination, if you get the endorsement, I would like to have you on to talk about some things, and I've got some people that are pulling some strings to get him on. We'll see how that goes." Not to take away from Kent, but I have a pretty big guest coming on Friday, this Friday. I know that many of my friends of the show, especially the Monday night show, like to tune into Friday Night Tights on Friday. I'm just going to ask you guys to forego Friday Night Tights this week and come on the show and watch live. I have Spike Cohen, the former vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party in the United States in 2020. He ran with Joe Jorgensen. He was a bronze medal winner in the election for president and vice president in 2020. He has agreed to come on, and we're going to have a live stream on Friday night, and we are going to talk about how he ended up libertarian philosophy, and libertarian ethics. We are going to talk about how that looks in the grand scheme of things here in the United States under the current socio-political cultural climate. And I'm hoping to turn it in, not necessarily just with Spike, but with other libertarians. I'm hoping to turn that into a regular show. I think it would be very interesting. I'm going to call it Libertarian. What did I say? The Libertarian Lowdown. Yeah, that's what we're going to be calling that as I get more Libertarian guests to come on. As you know, I had Bull Johnson on here a few weeks ago. He is a Libertarian candidate running as an independent up in a kind of a northwest quadrant of the state of Minnesota. And if you haven't done so yet, I do have a Subscribe Star set up. We're going to be putting some exclusive content out there. I have a I haven't announced this yet, so it's big announcement time. I have what is potentially could be a longer work, but at the moment is about a 10 chapter short story called Hell. That I'm going to be publishing on Subscribestar for my subscribers and only for my subscribers. And we'll be doing some exclusive video content there. And so if you're interested, it's pretty easy to find me. Minnesota Black Robe Regiment podcast on Subscribestar. There will be a link scrolling along the bottom here. And there's also a link in the description of this video. And as always, if you are even if you're not in the US, if you're interested in some merchandise, I have coffee. And I also have merchandise here. I've got shot glasses, I've got tumblers, I've got low balls, I've got mason jars for drinking. I know I keep coming back to these, by the way. TC's ASMR. No, Kent's already fallen asleep in the green room. But I've got these really nice slate coasters. They're phenomenal. So, okay, Pirate said share the link, TC. See that? He did say it. I'm not making it up. All right, I'll share it. Here we go. TC ASMR unsub. Yep, I would deserve that if I was actually trying to do ASMR. Anyway, you love it, Pirate. I'm going to bring Kent in. I want you guys to give him a round of applause. And if you have any really hard questions for him tonight, super chats go to him first. Super chat questions for Kent go to him first. And if you're watching this on playback, by the way, there is now an option to do what is referred to as a super thank you. So if you like my content, you can actually, on playback, send me a super chat basically in the way of a thank you. So take advantage of that. If you don't want to do the Subscribe Star, but you want to send me a couple of bucks, I would take that. I would like to keep this going and make it better. So ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Kent. Hello.
Hey, nice to see you, buddy. Glad we finally got together.
Yeah, I'm glad. We've been talking about this for over a month when I first started this series, and you said you'd be willing to come on, but you didn't know what you'd have to offer. So this might be the shortest show in the history of my channel.
Well, it's kind of a funny thing that Canada got so much international attention from the protests that, as we joke, your annoying little brother to the north actually got noticed worldwide, and it was a strange thing. We're used to being the little kid that nobody wants to play with until there's no one else in the game.
It's just so Pirate's clapping for you, by the way, because I said to. Pirate's here, and
Hey,
Judson
Pirate,
is
nice to see you.
Judson is here as well. I know you're familiar with both Pirate and Judson. From a different chat, from different chat days.
Hey, Judson.
So, tell me a little bit. One, you've got obviously young kids in the background. We were when we were doing our sound and video test on this yesterday. You haven't always lived an easy life. You kind of came into being an adult and being responsible a little late in life. So you've got a couple of youngins, and you're about my age, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, yeah. I'm yeah, my first was born 4 months after my 50th birthday. Like lots of guys get a friggin' midlife Harley for their crisis gift. I decided to start acting like a grown up, and it's it's just strange how life gets you to the wrong place so many
Or the right
times, and you
place,
don't know
depending
it.
on how
But
you
when you
look
get
at
to
it.
the right place, you do know it. And I just took the long road to the right place, I guess.
So, you're going to be playing. I mean, do you guys play catch in Canada? Is that even? I mean, is that a thing, or is it? Do you guys like throw arrows and spears at each other still? I don't. What's
Actually, my boy, he's into bicycling and riding, and we got his little battery powered ATV. We're a riding family, just because of being on the eastern slopes of the mountains. As soon as like we can load up the truck and be pretty much at the base of a 5,000 footer, an hour and a
which
half
part of the
after work,
Rocky?
ATV's loaded.
Which part of the Rockies are you in?
Uh, pretty much 2/3 of the way up. We're if visually, if you know, say from the Montana Canada border, I would be roughly 10 hours drive north of there as the crow flies without switchbacks, like straight drive. So we're getting into the edge of the Northern Rockies, close to Jasper National Park.
Okay,
So we're mountain people.
so you kind of live out in away from the metro parts of Canada to some degree.
Yeah, I am 6 hours drive from the capital city of Alberta, which is I think about 1,300,000. But yeah, like to get down to the big urban sprawl of Vancouver, that's say 3.8 million, 4.4 million, something like that. That's about 15 hours drive through the
And
mountains, and then
and that
yeah, the
would take you
huge
up over the
southern
pass.
Ontario basin.
That would take you up over the mountain passes to the west coast
Yeah,
because
through
Vancouver.
two passes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd be going Jasper and then south along the Thompson River Pass, I believe.
right, and
And it's
because
it's beautiful.
Vancouver
It's
Vancouver is directly north of Seattle across the Puget Sound.
correct,
I
about
mean,
4 hours drive.
right. Um, and you guys do have paved roads in Canada.
Just fine. Pretty
Just
good. They tend, because of the weather cycles, road maintenance is super expensive and our population density is lower. So obviously our infrastructure costs, road building is nah. Every spring we have pothole seasons. If I was a tire guy and a suspension guy, I'd be I'd be buying mama a new house every spring, just because of the friggin' revenue from busted shocks, bent rims, all that. As the frost comes out, it's just same thing as you guys get in Minnesota, I'm sure. Those
oh yeah,
terrible
with
freeze thaw cycles in the spring. Yeah,
Mi-
yeah, we still
Minnesota
get that
has
lake
the
effect.
Minnesota has the furthest, most northern point in the contiguous United States. The only place in the United States that's further north than the most northern part of Minnesota is Alaska, which of course we have to get through. We have to go through Canada to get to Alaska. So I'm not going to Alaska
Well,
because
that's
Canada won't let me in.
probably would. Well, hard to say now. The world's all crazy. It's all
We
crazy
didn't even know if they were going to
as
let me
far as
send coffee to my new doctor friends in Nova Scotia. So that,
wow.
that costs an
Well, we'll
arm
be
and a
finding
leg.
out.
Hey, I see you play guitar.
Yeah, not as much as I used to. Been a mediocre guitarist for probably 30 years. The arthritis has taken its toll on my hands. So now I'm that's something that I want to pass on to the kids though, is that relationship with music. That was now the too many years working rigs, joint pain, arthritis. It's harder than it used to be. And well, my hearing, it all sounds flat.
Everything,
but
all the notes
it's
sound
okay.
flat, huh?
Getting old in the right ways too.
Getting older.
Yeah, it's a funny
So
thing.
are
That
you
frequency loss, right?
are you an Alex Lifeson style guitarist, or are you more laid back and
I'm
subdued?
a chord guy. The one, like, I was always a rhythm player. Um, as far as players, one of the recent deaths that really affected me was Malcolm Young. I we're almost boomers, man. You know, AC/DC. I grew up listening to all that stuff, and once you learn a handful of chords, then suddenly you can make AC/DC sound good, and everybody knows how to sing "Highway to Hell" at a party, right?
You wanna hear a funny story?
And that was kind of, yeah,
I'm 51 years
funny
old.
story.
I have been relatively conservative my entire life. Obviously more conservative now. You know, the old saying is if you're under the age of 30 and you're not a leftist, you have no heart. And if you're over the age of 30 and you're not a conservative, you have no brain. Um, but I never thought for the life of me I would ever go to a Republican convention of at any level, be it county level or state level or national level, and ever hear AC/DC being played. And they played AC/DC for
Really?
bumper, yes, Highway to Hell bumper music between speeches on Saturday. I'm I don't know if it was prophetic or ironic. It might have been ironically prophetic, but they did it. So, so Kent,
That's
you
pretty
and
cool, man.
yeah, I mean, Minnesota Republicans are as cool can. I can't even pull that one off. I'm going to stop. Um, you you and I met through unsafe space chat, and we kind of hit it off early on in the Telegram group. Um, and you started paying attention to my content, and we started talking back and forth a little bit more, uh, and you have been following me, and I know that you had said that my story was compelling to you, but I'm I'm wondering if people can understand. I want to say this. Politics in Canada is not the same as it is in the U.S. So I had Dr. Chris on here and from Nova Scotia a couple of months ago, and he certainly has a different perspective coming from the medical field, and even his perspective on medicine in Canada versus medicine in the United States. He said that Canada does have a good system in the sense that people are taken care of, but it's lacking and poor in some respects, and their control is very hard. You have a layman's perspective on a lot of what happens in Canada, and I've noticed that you have, and correct me if I'm wrong, as a more because you work oil, is it oil rigs you work?
Yeah. I did off and on the last 20 years. I was in the oil and gas industry, and I came there from uh, trades manufacturing background, and then before that, I was wandering, I guess,
So
which is
you
not a
you have a
terrible
more
thing.
you have more of a a blue collar working man perspective on a lot of things, and I, I'm wondering, is your perspective, do you consider yourself more classical libertarian type? Do you consider yourself more of a conservative, centrist? And how do you view politics as a Canadian citizen? And
Well,
what do you think of how politics work in the United States?
a, a quick little overview of my own political evolution was as a young man, I grew up in a conservative household, rural conservatives, typical salt of the earth, blue collar, middle class, and then I found myself leaning towards a more center left, even in a lot of ways socially. But what what really what really made me think
She's
of
adorable.
how crazy the world in Canada got, particularly in the last few years, was pretty much like through the Coof time, was wow, for what used to be Canadian liberalism, that's socially liberal and fairly or fiscally responsible. As soon as the Coof came around, our current liberal government went spend crazy like I had never seen. They went authoritarian like I didn't think they would. And honestly, it's made me think that the sensible center in Canada kind of went. It's like the whole country is run by the squad in a way federally.
You brought American
I've really,
politics into that. I love it. It's awesome.
well, it's a fun thing because the one of the jokes that I notice about how our countries are so closely tied together is that if one of us farts, the other smells it, and and we both do populism in our own ways, and that's kind of
Yeah.
where our conservative party is dancing with now. But your center, particularly within the Democratic movement, has sort of took a big jump and got to where our center maybe was midway of, I would think midway of Trudeau's first term when he legalized cannabis. I really see the left the leftward pull in both of our countries happening, just separated by maybe 3 to 5 years. And it concerns me because I'm fundamentally a small government guy. I'm a decentralized. I like decentralization, which to me, early in our government's Coof response, it was really decentralized, which I thought was a pretty good thing. Like I'm not particularly a Trudeau hater in any stretch. His first term, his politics and policy were not bad, but the Coof policy and particularly the protests was poorly handled by the Fed. It was poorly handled by the organizers. I can get into that a bit later, but yeah, boy, I think I might even have joked to you that it's like I kind of get tired of being a liberal apologist because being socially liberal is sort of where my anchor point always was. I guess I went on a bit of a ramble there.
No, you might have been slightly distracted.
uh,
And by the way, she was adorable. I'm not CNN. I don't mind when someone's kids come rushing into the scene. So, and and you're in Canada, so no one can find you.
Yeah, hidden.
So you find like so philosophically, you and I probably actually have some, and I don't mean, and you've gotten to know me. You and I probably have some differences on certain issues. Being a little bit left of center on social issues, I'm sure there are things where Pirate says, "Don't do it, Tubin." If that's that, I'm sure you're there.
That was funny.
I'm wearing
That's
jeans.
funny, dude.
I'm wearing jeans. You and I probably have maybe at one point had some differences. I would imagine you find yourself shifting further into the center, maybe even center right, based on what you've been seeing in your own nation. But you brought up the legalization of marijuana, cannabis, whatever name you want to put on there. Do you Do you see that the legalization of something like weed as the beginning of an end kind of situation for a nation such as Canada, or do you see it more of a uh, small government decision?
Uh, Honestly, I haven't touched the stuff for like a long time, but I always knew. I'm just speaking as an addict, speaking as an ex-addict. I always knew that weed was far more benign a bad habit than alcoholism, at least for me. So when the talk of just legalization of cannabis, of weed, came up, it was a good thing to me. I thought it was a good thing. The black market kind of disappeared and went on to other things. Arguably, fentanyl and opiates, that was going to happen anyway, I think. But yeah, as far as uh, having the stores around and the social impacts, like I got lots of friends have younger kids, early 20s and stuff like that, and kids are going to smoke the stuff anyway. No sense giving them a criminal record and ruining their life over it. Because at the end of the day, I do consider it a far less harmful vice than alcohol, I guess.
Pirate asked what I think is actually a pretty good question, not just because he did a super chat in pounds, by the way. He said, when liberals go nuts and off the deep end, doesn't a bit of conservatism seem good? How would you respond to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, they're good.
Absolutely. It's a pendulum. It's got to have a pendulum. We tend to do Canada, as long as I've been into politics, you guys typically do 2 terms, a 2-term pendulum swing. We typically do 6 to 10 years going between red and blue, and our red and blues are inverted from yours. Your
Blues are
liberals
conservative.
are red. Our blue is the federal conservative party, and we also have the roughly 20% is where they've been hanging an orange party, a new Democratic Party, which is pretty much they're pretty much Bernie. It's pretty much the neoliberals who are essentially socially liberal conservatives, because they love private enterprise just like conservatives do. But there's always going to be that 20% that is pretty much Bernie, Democratic Socialist, all about social problems, all about unions, all about feeding funds to public health care, funding education, manipulating education. You know how James Lindsay and some of our regular people and Josh, that we've got the same thoughts on how education goes wrong. That's that. Our lefties are all flying an orange flag typically, and our liberals and conservatives are typically capitalist liberals, and our conservatives tend to be, in the prairies anyway, it tends to be ag, forestry, mining, oil and gas, blue collar.
So
and the same thing happened as the left.
In reality, a lot like Minnesota.
Yeah, really. Yeah, definitely. But Minnesota, all the border states, right? The same resources, the same economy. Your flyover states are our 3 prairie provinces, bro. Pretty much socially almost the same. The only difference is different distances are maybe a little bit longer, but not much. I've drove across North and South Dakota. You can go a long ways without seeing nothing.
Yeah. All you need to do is get on Interstate 90 in South Dakota and realize just how alone you are. So,
yeah, that's a beautiful feeling, though.
I agree. I'm 30 miles south of the 3rd largest metro area in the state of Minnesota, and people are like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "How do you do what you do every day?" So, do you find that your social conservatism is growing because it's being pushed on you, for lack of better terminology, by this oligarchical, over controlling, centralization of power in Canada. I mean, it's not just Justin Castro Trudeau. I mean, it's been coming for a while.
Well, the our last conservative prime minister was an Alberta guy, and that he had, I believe, about 8 years for him in a majority. During that time, the West did good. Barrel prices were high. I was like full bore working rigs, and it was the golden years, man. It was a good area. Because of our economy and our size of the country, which is something that you guys deal with there too. The circumstances make it almost a black swan event for all parts of the country to prosper at the same time. So that, combined with a sort of a pendulum effect of the left-right stuff socially, seems to all work together. Like, you know, tech in the big cities, they're typically they're going to be educated urban liberals. Blue collar tradespeople are pretty much staying conservative, and the prairies are legacy conservative regions anyway. You got to swing 2 or 3 cities conservative in Canada to get any kind of majority. That's one of the glitches of a parliamentary system. As far as populism coming into Canadian conservatism, I think a fair amount of that. I'm going to just go here, okay? Our current prime minister, if you're like a manly man who works in the trades, you ain't going to the same golf courses as he is. So
you guys have golf courses in Canada? Is there even a season for that?
Yeah, we have pretty good golf courses, bro. Really
okay.
Good golf courses.
Yeah, but your golf season is like a month. So
we pretty much here, I would think we just get the extra month on either end compared to what you'd see in Minnesota. Like golf courses are open now. The greens would be a little wet, and then we normally we can play into first week in November if we don't get no snow.
Judson said the centralization of power will always cause social instability. I think you and I both can see that play out in Canada and in the Republic of the United States.
Big time, and that's kind of exactly why I personally was so surprised with the momentum that the trucker convoy caught. Like, that's for something like that. That's the second one of them that's happened in Canada. There was another one about what would it have been? 2018, when we were having there was a lot of pipeline issues going on. So a whole bunch of oil sector guys loaded their trucks, did the same thing. It didn't get a whole lot of international attention, and it kind of got shut down because there were some really bad visuals of some of these yellow vest guys who said lots of really, really undeniably racist things online. Like, that's kind of the problem with grassroots decentralization of populist movements in Canada, is they can't keep those actual bad guys out of them. The rats always find a way in the barn, and it ruins every grassroots movement that's to the right of BLM or whatever, right?
I think what you just said ties in really well with what Tomsky just said, which is the UK Conservatives are being dragged way left. I think you see that in Canada that your conservative movement is being dragged to the left. I know that I see it here in the United States, and boy, you've got just everything. You've got you've got kids, you've got cats.
2 cats, 2 kids. And the wife had to work late. She knew this was coming up, but so she was gonna at least handle kid wrangling. But
Hey, life happens, and that's why this
it
is
certainly
called
does.
this is why it's called TC and Friends Monday Night Musings, and not TC and Friends Monday Night Serious Conversation. So, what I would imagine is that I see this happening in the United States, but I also see it happening in my state. That the left goes hard. They go very hard, and they are not afraid to eviscerate their own people to advance their agenda. The conservatives in the United States. Oh, there we go. We got you back. Okay.
Just
The
had a glitch.
conservatives
I don't know
in
if it was yours or mine.
I think that might have been on your end. Is she okay?
Oh, honey bear.
Hey, you. If you've got to go, and I mean this, if you've got to go, I can and help her out.
Yeah, I got an upset little girl. If you want to
You
do
go.
a little bit, let me.
Yeah, you go do that. I'll monologue for a while.
Okay.
Oh boy. Hey, live streaming is is a reality, right? Life happens, and we respond to it. So what I'm seeing here in the U.S. is a move towards the Conservative Party moving further to the left because they don't have the moxie or the integrity to be able to stand up to what the left is doing. And so the left is very, very good at how do I want to say this? The left is very good at dragging the right along while they're eviscerating their own people if need be. Now, hey, look, I'm not a Bernie guy. I'm not a Bernie bro by any stretch of the imagination. But what we saw play out with the last presidential election is that the Clinton regime eviscerated Bernie, and they had no problem with just destroying him at all. And I'm not necessarily upset that they did that, but they then turned around and did that with Biden and Harris, eviscerated Bernie. And that set them up to be in a position of power. The Republicans can't do that. And I saw that play out on Saturday, here just a few days ago, in Minnesota, where on the platform during the convention, one of the candidates for office said, we have to learn that Ronald Reagan's rule is we have to play, thou shalt not talk bad of other Republicans. And I think that there comes a time where we have to start doing that. And the reality is Republicans are no good at that because they are always willing to meet people in the middle. The problem is the further that the left goes to the middle, the more likely the right is to shift to the left to find the middle, to meet and get things done. And instead of calling out people for being leftist in the party, we tread gently and quietly around that, and we don't address their poor philosophy. We don't address their poor politic. We don't address their compromise. And see, the left doesn't compromise. The left will not compromise. The left refuses to compromise. And that's been one of the reasons why Canada has shifted to the left. I can think back to my youth when Canada would have been kind of considered, okay, they were socialistic in some respects, but they would have been considered this quintessential traditional conservative enclave. But people don't just leave me alone, let me live my life, let me do my thing, and they just keep going. The left just keeps moving and they keep dragging the right along. And sooner or later, your centrist conservatives, your center right conservatives, actually end up looking like the radical right that they keep describing. And everybody runs away from that. I'm going to use an example, and people probably won't understand this, but there was just this weekend here in the United States, there was a mass shooting event that took place in a urban area, and this individual shot and killed numerous people. And the media came out as soon as they got his name, and they released that he had this manifesto online, 180 an 18-year-old man had a 180-page manifesto about replacement theory. And their immediate response was to go for Tucker Carlson and all of the other conservatives and saying, look, these people promote this ideology. Now, the fact of the matter is that Tucker Carlson does not promote replacement ideology, replacement theory. He just talks about the reality that the United States is being flooded with illegal aliens. That's not replacement theory. It's a fact. It's the truth. No talk about the reality that this 18-year-old young man wore a full hazmat suit to school every day. They've just immediately labeled him a right-wing extremist who has been influenced by all the right-wing extremists in the United States. And how this ties into what Kent was saying is that over and above the reality of what a person's socio-political philosophy might be, is the left plays hard. They don't care who they hurt, who they besmirch, who they smear, who they slander, who they libel. They have an agenda and they are going to work it out no matter what. They are going to get to their end goal, and they'll be damned if anything stands in the way. And what the right does is we have to play fair. We have to play nice. We have to make sure that we're doing everything in the world to seem like we're kind and that we're gentle and that we're very gracious. And what it's doing is killing us. It's killing the conservatives. It's killing the traditionalists. And there again, I saw this play out over the weekend in Minnesota. It's Tomsky says, what do you say here? Because the left don't agree with what the West was built upon. They don't respect personal property rights or civil liberties. Hell, they don't even see people as individuals. Exactly. And Judson, you're 100% correct. They don't care about the truth either. They have no standards. It's because they don't have an objective understanding of what truth even is or what standards are. And it sounds individualistic to say that everybody has their own truth, but what it is that's actually collectivism. And it leads to collectivism. And it looks like Kent is getting his stuff set back up so he can come back in here. And so we're going to get ready to do that. But if you guys aren't aware, by the way, my friend Laura Rear from Rocky Mountain Healthcare has finally gotten herself certified in Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana. She's got 5 states. And this is going to tie into what I'm going to bring up with Kent here next. She has 5 states that she's certified to do medication in, where she can actually meet with you either on the phone or on the computer through video chat or whatnot. And she's got a doctorate in nurse practitioner as a nurse practitioner. She is a board certified nurse practitioner, and her own experience with the Coof over the last 2 years has really caused her to rethink how medicine is practiced here in the United States. And as our friend Dr. Chris from Nova Scotia has said, he's even really started to consider how medicine should be practiced in places like Canada. So if you're in any of those 5 states that I mentioned, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, or Montana, please look up Laura and reach out to her, because she is going to provide you with medical care in a way that is not restrictive, respects your individual liberties and desires, and she is going to help you find a way to make yourself better as all of this goes on. Tomsky says, this is why I think ideas like anarchy will fail. They will always be collectivists who will overrun them and destroy them. And, Tomsky, I think that's a great point. I think that there's so many variances with anarchism. There's that weird radical idea of anarchism, which we've all we all know that guy that doesn't think there should be any kind of laws, there shouldn't be any kind of government at all, and we know, mostly because they just want to do some really stupid and crazy things with their lives, and we have to be cautious in that respect. But I do think there is a reality in which anarchism is always going to get overrun, because people in Western culture today are very interested in being safe. They want people to step in and take care of them, to make them comfortable. And it's because we've been conditioned that way. Our school systems, our education systems have taught us to think that way. And it's actually a little terrifying when you think about the kind of power that they have and what they're allowed to do with that kind of manipulation, if you will. I don't know. Looks, I thought here, no, I don't have Kent back yet. So I'm looking to see. Yeah, I can't even hear him in the background. So let's do this. If you're watching right now, if you have a question and you'd like to ask it, let me know. I don't care what it is. I wasn't prepared to go freeform tonight. I didn't have a topic to talk about. What's Tomsky say here? My viewpoint is to reduce the government as much as possible to the point where we still have a functional society. I like that. I think that's a great viewpoint. I think that definitionally we can have a hard time defining functional society, because I think there's so many variances in people's sociocultural philosophies that we have to some degree, Tomsky, I think we have to find ourselves living in a little bit of an echo chamber when it comes to that, to make that work. So your more mainstream conservatives, I like to refer to them as normie cons, the reactionary conservatives who get all their news from Fox News, Sean Hannity, and all of that, and the Five all the time. They would have to almost glom onto each other and kind of centralize themselves into one area, where you're more isolationist, paleo-conservative types and more of your right-leaning libertarians would have to move kind of in an enclave together to be able to get to a point where we can function as a society with shared values. And one of the great detriments to modern Western culture has been the social Marxism of Gramscian theory, as embraced and taught by Alinsky here in the United States, especially, is that the ideological importance of class warfare and social warfare. And what we see now is that even conservatism is so heavily split, so powerfully split, that even some segments of conservatism can't even get along well enough to actually execute any kind of change, which is why the states in the United States that are moving to the left continue to skyrocket at an unimaginable speed in that direction, that they are the conservatives are so busy infighting about what it means to be a conservative that the left is just taking over. We're seeing this in Minnesota. I had this conversation with somebody after the events on Saturday for the Republican convention in the state. I shared a video of my conversation with Matt Burke, and this person came on and said, "Well, you can't you can't be so focused on the perfect that you miss the good," or something to that effect. And what it came down to for me was, like, I want an actual conservative, And what they said is that you can't have a hardcore conservative and win in the state of Minnesota. Like, I'm not asking for a hardcore conservative. I'm not asking for someone who's, a William Buckley type. Although that would, by my estimation, if you're going to look for a conservative, William Buckley would be the direction to go. But could we at least get a Ron Paul or a Rand Paul type, who, yes, they're libertarians, but they run as conservatives? Could we get that? That would be great. And we can't get that because of all the infighting and the fact that the Republican Party is centrist at best, if not left of center. Judson, you're absolutely right. In any event, power should be devolved to the most local level possible. I agree. I had this conversation with a coworker today, and I see Kent's back, so I'll finish this little monologue question and answer period off here in just a second. Had this conversation with a coworker today. They were talking about Spike Cohen, who, by the way, if you weren't paying attention, is coming on Friday night, was complaining, and I think rightly so, about checkpoints several miles removed from the most southern border in the United States, where they were looking for Hispanics, and people were complaining, along with Spike, about checkpoints. And I'm like, it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment in the United States. Just stopping cars and demanding to see the ID and proof of citizenship. You don't have a right to do that. You don't have the authority to do that here in the United States. And he said, well, how are we going to stop? And I'm not picking on him. I don't mean this in a negative way towards him, but my friend said, well, how are we going to stop this influx of illegal aliens into the United States? I said, because the states need to nullify the federal government's power. They have to nullify the federal government's power. If the federal government says you can't stop these folks at the border, the states need to give them the middle finger and tell them, screw you. Not only do we not care what you say, we're going to kick your border patrol agents out of the state away, and we're going to take over this checkpoint because it's on our property, and we're going to stop these people at the gates. And if a red state in the United States, it's not on the border, says, hey, you guys need backup, we'll send our National Guard troops, nullify the federal power. That's how the states take back that power from the feds. Tomsky says, right now we need to reverse the governmental overreach and centralization of power. I just want to point out that Tomsky spells everything wrong. He is a member of the United Kingdom spelling delegation, and he does not spell things with the Z in the right place. But we need to reverse the governmental overreach and centralization of power. It's ridiculous how much power they have. The fact Coof hasn't woken more people up is amazing. I agree 100%. I have said on my show and in other platforms that I'm actually very impressed that some people have adapted and realized just how far the left has gone, and they went really fast. And here in the U.S., the left was moving that way. I see you, Tomsky. The left was moving that way well before the Coof restrictions. And I pointed out to somebody that it was the Patriot Act. So, after September 11th of 2001, the Patriot Act was actually the onset of the centralization of authoritarianism. And guess who brought that to us? Alleged conservatives in the United States, alleged conservatives in the Republic. And yet conservatives were all on board. And I, to my detriment, I have to walk that back and say that I myself was also going, yeah, we got to do something to stop these terrorists. Well, I'm not saying we don't stop terrorists, but you don't give the federal government more power. Hey, thanks for stopping in. I appreciate that. Swinging in to say hello. Hello. Hello? I don't know. How do you say that, Tomsky, in English? Tomsky says, you mean the people who created the language? Did you though? I mean, I think your folks may have created it, but we perfected it. Yeah, I said it. Anyway, it's like old home week. Everybody in the chat that's there right now, right, knows each other. I don't know. I think we may have lost Kent. I was just getting ready to bring him back in again after his technical difficulties, but that's okay. I don't necessarily have to do this for 2 hours on every Monday night. Maybe we can bring Kent on again at some point, but I think that Canada, by and large, is a small micro. Do I have to say small when I say microcosm? Canada is, by and large, a microcosm of the United States in that they are further advanced than us in progressivism. I would say, probably it used to be 20 to 30 years further along in their trend towards leftist ideology. I would say now that the United States has accelerated, the Republic of the U.S. has accelerated under progressivism, under revolving around the Coof and whatnot. It is probably closer to 5 to 10 years. I think with the Biden and Harris administration being what it is, that if we cannot restrict their growth very quickly, we might catch up to Canada. And we're seeing this play out now with things like the Supreme Court leak of a couple of weeks ago. And hey, Kent's back. We'll get ready to bring him right back in here. And we're seeing this play out in... well, Tomsky, I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, the First Amendment, you'll be fine. The problem is that we're seeing that it's not fine anymore. And that's one of the things that this governor of the state, New York, Buffalo, with this mass shooting, and but what we're not touching on is the school or the the church shooting that took place out in California, right? New York and Buffalo, incredibly high gun control. California, incredibly high gun control. Where are the mass shootings taking place, by the way? But this governor of the state said that we need to do more to crack down on this kind of language, this kind of writing. These people need to be shut down. Now, I'm not saying this kid who goes to a government school, and Kent, I'm going to bring you in while I'm finishing my little monologue. While we're looking at these people who are doing these horrible things, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be intervening, but this guy was on the radar. Like, he was wearing a full hazmat suit during the Coof. That's not a right-wing extremist mentality, right? That is not how the right wing responds. The right wing goes, I'm not wearing anything, let alone a hazmat suit. And yet he's being painted into that light of being a right-wing extremist. Now, 180-page manifesto that was based an awful lot off of the shooter in New Zealand. How much of that was copycat? And quite frankly, the news that's been breaking over the last several weeks, and I've been telling people this for months, the FBI loves to fake. They did it with the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. I mean, the defendants in the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot were all found not guilty. The ones that were actually on trial were found not guilty because the FBI did all the work. They wrote the plot. They did all of the. They provided all the explosives, all the firearms, and these three numbskull morons just kind of went along. And on the day of the kidnapping plot that it was supposed to take place, two people in the vehicle were actually private citizens. The rest of them were all FBI agents. But how now the two private citizens are on trial for their lives. The FBI agents, their identity is protected so that they can continue to do this. You'll have to color me a little suspicious that this guy goes out and kills people in a grocery store after driving hours. I don't know an 18-year-old alive right now that has the attention span to write a 180-page document declaring his white supremacy over the replacement theory. I don't know. Like most of them couldn't even write you a 5-paragraph thing about why they love to play Animal Crossing.
And that was a weird thing. Shapiro brought that up today, that especially with the talking about Tucker, talking about the replacement theory and all that, the way that the center, left to center media can play that, they can just cast a broad balloon or a broad sheet over any questioning of immigration, any question. The word demographic, that's apparently a whistle, a dog whistle, a racist dog whistle in the leftist circles too, right from their little code book.
Absolutely.
Anytime you say anything about with the word demographic in it, it goes right to racist dog whistle. Always, you know, the same word tricks, right?
Well, you know, Kent, I think, and you guys, I know you guys deal with this a lot because you have a much higher level of restriction on your freedom of speech because, you know, even in your charter on rights and freedoms, your constitution doesn't guarantee any liberties, and even the charter only guarantees liberties in as much as the federal government says it's okay. And
Yeah, it's a funny thing, and even when I started getting really better informed about that was straight up when Jordan Peterson found his first little taste of infamy for talking about the issue of compelled speech, and that got conflated straight into transphobia and blah blah blah. And of course, they jumped all over that too when you explain the same thing about the difference between compelled speech, protected speech, free speech. He explained the objections to compelled speech in front of parliamentary committees, and just talking to the wind because media takes the pieces that they want. Like, that's the real thing with media bias, is selection bias on what they report things. A lot of people say media lies. No, media doesn't lie. Media doesn't tell you all of it. And you know, as I think it was probably Carter brought it up, trying to find friggin' original source anything on Google or regular search engines, it's ridiculous. Trying to find unedited clips or unedited video of anything, that's buried on page 50 of a search. I'm sure, obviously, that's by design, right? That's how they control narrative.
well, I mean, even everybody's go-to there for a while was DuckDuckGo. Right now, even DuckDuckGo is now saying that they're going to, you know, remove anything that looks like disinformation or misinformation. While you were dealing with your stuff, I was talking about my friend Laura in Montana, who is a nurse practitioner. She has a doctorate. Basically, a nurse practitioner in the United States is a doctor who does everything doctors do as well as everything nurses do. So they work twice as hard for half the money. So it's like living in Canada.
Yeah.
I was bringing up that about medical care and medical freedom here in the United States, and as Dr. Chris had said when I had him on, sure, yeah, you don't have to worry about ever paying out of pocket for medical expenses, but good luck in Canada getting medical care when it's deemed incredibly necessary, uh, especially if you're not just in the right bracket of people. Do you find that to be are your medical freedoms as heavily restricted as some Canadians and a lot of Americans paint it out to be? Because you get two groups of Americans of people from the U.S. The Yankees. You get people who go, we need to have exactly the same healthcare system as Canada, and then you get the other side going, no, I don't want anything to do with Canadian healthcare. Where do you fall in that?
Provincially, we have there's a lot of variance from province to province. So your buddy in the Maritimes, his their situation could be very different. I know here for where the bottlenecks are, a lot of the bottlenecks are in testing. And say a perfect example was if I wanted to get a specific process, MRI or whatever, a CAT scan, I can go, okay, I can get in with the government place for this, and it'll take me, say, 6 weeks, maybe a month, maybe 6 months, whatever. Or I can say, okay, could you get me a referral to a private, and I can pay out of pocket and get that in days versus weeks. So that is,
or months in some situations.
Yeah, or months. Now, so another weird example of that was I was looking at an elective surgery for my ear, and I did, what was it, 5 or 6 consults with a surgeon in Edmonton, maybe 5, 6 trips. All that's travel expenses were tax deductible, which is whatever, it's a thing. If I would have gone for that elective surgery, it would have taken me probably a year to get the process done. But I could have also, he said, if I wanted to go and get that surgery done fast, he says, honestly, I would just give you your files and either send you to Mexico or send you either to, I believe one was in Boston. And he said, yeah, like he said, it'll cost you, buddy. So it's like, I turned out not to do it. So the variance is a lot. Like, and then perfect example, when our kids were born, all it cost me was coffee and parking. That was it. So, and
it was probably Tom Hortons coffee too.
No, it's not as good anymore. They switch beans. If it ain't Arabica, I wouldn't wash my feet in it.
You haven't tried my coffee yet.
Hawaii did that to me.
Tomsky says people praise the NHS in the UK, but it's socialized healthcare that pisses so much money up against the wall. Give me back my money and I'll pay for what I need, please. That's what I hear. Americans, the people in the US have this pie in the sky ideology about what it means to have socialized healthcare, because they throw the term out, it's free. And I'm like, no, bro, it's not free. They tax the living crap out of you to provide you with something for free, and then you get a lower quality care ultimately. Because a lot of times, and we see this play out. So I live 30 miles south of the Rochester, Minnesota area, which is home of the Mayo Clinic. And if you're not familiar with what the Mayo Clinic is, I don't know where you've been in the medical world, but the Mayo brothers, they built something here. And there are a lot of people that live off, they suck the tit of the state, and they go to the hospital for everything. Oh, I got a headache, go to the hospital. Oh, I've got a cold, go to the hospital. Oh, I've got an ingrown toenail, go to the hospital. Oh, I've got ingrown hair, go to the hospital. And they don't care when they go. They don't call, make an appointment. They go to the emergency department.
Yeah, that happens here too.
Because they're not paying for it.
Consumers. Yeah, definitely it's abused.
And so, yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we need this for everybody. And I'm over here going, no, we don't. Are there legitimate needs? Do you have a friend or a family member who maybe legitimately has some debilitating reasons why they can't work, and therefore they maybe can't afford insurance? Then yeah, there might be a need for a system that helps them out for a while. But at the same time, when you talk about my friend Laura, who, there again, I mean, she's 5 states that she's able to do telemed in, and she's helping people on a daily basis. And she's giving them personalized care in a way that the corporatocracy of industrialized medicine doesn't do. And Laura and I talked about this. I had her on for a several part series, and then I had her on for a Saturday sit rep here. I think it was now 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and we talked about her being licensed in Minnesota again. What healthcare has become in places like Canada and the UK, and even in the US, is it's no longer about healthcare, it's about sick care. We look at your symptoms, we want to mitigate your symptoms, but we're never actually getting to the reality of what is causing your problem. And doing something to address that problem so that we no longer have to mitigate the symptom. We can alleviate the symptom because we've eliminated the problem. And that's what socialized healthcare and whatnot has caused for us. And quite frankly, corporate healthcare in the United States is nothing more than a socialized form of healthcare, because you have to have insurance to cover the exorbitant prices. And there's been a lot of truth in billing people lately. Who said, you start to put a menu out for what your healthcare, when you go into an ED or whatever, and you start to put a menu, that's very big in Europe. When you walk by a restaurant, a bistro or an inn or something, and the prices will be on the menu outside of on an outside window of the business, so you can see what a burger or a pasta dish might cost you. And you do that with medical care, people are going to stop going to the doctor when they find out that going in for a allegedly broken pinky toe is going to cost you $75,000 before insurance kicks in. They're going to go, I can deal with a broken pinky toe. I'll wait to come when I think I have cancer. That's and it drive prices down. Tomsky says, my step-uncle ran a business for 20 plus years, then was appointed to be an NHS NHS board, and he was shocked how many millions they wasted on nonsense. That's centralized. There again, he spelled it wrong. I'm just going to keep pointing that out. That's centralized control without accountability. And that's exactly what happens when you centralize any kind of bureaucratic morass. You lose accountability.
A thing that's happening specifically in Alberta, where our premier governor version is going through a leadership review within his own party. He's kind of 50-50 if he's getting skidded, and one of the big scandals that pre-Coof and through the start of it was a lot of the support staff within the hospital system was union government employees, full benefits, blah blah blah, pretty decent paying jobs. And so obviously there was a fairly aggressive plan to turn over some of that to private contracting. And that was obviously, since Alberta doesn't have a real liberal party, we have the NDP left, and we have two different we previously had a choice between right and far right, but they came together as a center right single conservative party to blow out the lefties last election, who were actually quite moderate. But yeah, that was the thing. Anytime that there's talk in Canada about subcontracting any support services and healthcare out, they lose it. The left loses it. It's knives out and screaming, oh, they want to steal your healthcare. They want to steal your healthcare. So it's a terrible spot if you want to try and design any efficiencies into a socialized medical system. It's, as Tomsky would know that more than us, because from what I heard, their system is just by obviously by sheer volume, just from the population of the UK, a monster gets bigger, right? The more money you feed it, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, here in the U.S., my experience has been, I worked retail sales for quite a while before I went off into the law enforcement world as a deputy in a detention center. And I would interact with people there again because I was working in Rochester. I was driving the 30 miles to get to Rochester and working in that what I euphemistically refer to as the Mayo bubble. Living inside the Mayo bubble, working inside the Mayo bubble, I would deal with people from all over the world, like United Arab Emirates, Canada, England, Germany, you name it. And people were coming to the US. They're going, yeah, it's going to cost me more here, but I can get the care that I want and pay for it. Now, obviously, the irony of that is that these states, the nation states that, well, I need healthcare. I just hit my elbow. These nation states, as they centralize and socialize their healthcare, are literally subjugating and oppressing the poorer people in their state to the point where they're completely dependent, while the wealthy people are able to flee that kind of dependency and go someplace else to get the health care that they want. And I ran into it constantly. Frequently in Rochester, I'd run into people. I'm like, oh, hey, what brings you here? Well, we're from Canada. We're down here for cancer treatment. And I'm like, what do you mean you're here for cancer treatment? Well, it was going to be quite a while before we could get a full diagnosis and another opinion. And then even then, whether or not we could even get chemo or radio treatment, radiological treatment for the cancer was really dependent on whether or not they felt we were worth it. And I don't think that just doesn't, the single payer system that everybody demands we have in the US, I don't think people understand. It could kill you by the time they get around to deciding whether or not you're worthy of treatment.
That's one specific thing in about Canadian healthcare is that, which I found out about this fairly recently. If you smoke, you're not getting on any donors lists.
Right.
That's like, okay, whatever, I get it, but not having like I suppose if a person's got the coin, yeah, go down to the States and buy yourself to the front, which I don't know if
But you don't even have to do that in the States. You don't have to buy yourself to the front. You just find a doctor and say, hey, I'm willing to pay for this. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, oh no, I dig it, man. It's a moral question though, right? Then that becomes, you're dancing with some really, really these are deep, pretty deep philosophical issues. When you
far deeper than I can go, but far deeper than I'm capable of going.
Oh no, I'm too tired. I worked all day to. That's that would be Sunday at noon after 2 cups of tea to dive into that one.
Tomsky says, here's another problem: overpriced healthcare, where the government promotes higher prices. A free market wouldn't cause that. Get government out of healthcare. That's exactly why I brought up Laura earlier. It wasn't just a commercial for her, by the way. I did not get paid for that. Laura doesn't take insurance. If she will write up a special type of billing for you to submit it to your insurance if you want, but she does not take insurance, which means she also does not take Medicare or Medicaid. And she's able to keep her prices up, and her profit margins are higher when she does get a client because they're paying, for lack of better terminology, they're paying cash. And it's not like she's a quack. It's not like she went to medical school in Granada and she came back. She's literally got, a doctorate from here in the US. And, quite frankly, high-end schools gave Dr. Fauci his medical degree. Look what that did for us. So, I mean, he screwed up the entire world. So, I agree too. Anytime the state gets involved in regulating something, it's going to drive the cost of things up, and it's by design. I was having this conversation with somebody else, and we were really listening in and focusing in on the conversation where you look at the drive to get families to be a 2-income family. you have to have two incomes to survive. You have to have two incomes to survive. Well, does that benefit the family, or does that benefit the state? It benefits the state because they can tax you more because you're both working. Whereas if you decide to make sacrifices, one of you stays home, maybe you're not living as high on the hog as you were before, but everybody's better off, but the state suffers because they're not able to tax you as much. And that's really ultimately, in my mind, that's what the drive behind abortion is. That's what the drive behind um, the idea, the ideological misperception that women are paid less than men for the equal kind of work. It's really ultimately just to keep two breadwinners in the workforce to be able to um, drive up the cost of things, to be able to gain more taxes, to be able to get people more dependent on the system. And look, now I know Canada has some versions of this in some areas of uh, free childcare for preschool and daycare.
It's I think some provinces have some subsidies, um, like fairly low cost. I guess they're shooting towards stuff like $10 progressive things towards $10-20 a day daycare. We had our older one in a government certified registered daycare, like where basically governments do the inspection. They don't set any of the curriculum activities, none of that. It's just basically an oversight, making sure that they had people that were trained in first aid, were trained in some of that early development stuff, and there's like a licensing program, and I seem to remember it was like 35 or $40 a day with both of us working, and that was like something like kind of 7:30 to 5:30, with like regulated for number of kids per daycare worker. And honestly, maybe it's just because we were up on the boonies here, and it was a smaller. They're privately run, like they're private businesses operating under a government certification program. And honestly, it was a great experience. Our little guy loved it. It helped with the socialization, and I I may be fooling myself if I think they're all like that, but it's also a smaller town with demographics of lots of younger couples, lots of kids. If you're doing it wrong, the word's going to get out in a town of these demographics, just because it's a lot younger. It's a transient resource town, right? Tradespeople, younger couples. So if they ain't doing it right, they're going to get buried, because
Let's
this is
let's
the
push
Alberta.
on let's push on that socialization thing, because I've been talking about this on my Facebook page quite a bit with people. A couple of people got mad at me, but you know, home educated our kids from kindergarten through senior year till graduation. They never spent a day in government operated schools. Uh, Better or worse, I don't know. Some people would say they lacked socialization, and I say my kids are actually pretty well adjusted for addressing life with um, people of a varied amount of ages. But that's the thing that we hear a lot with daycare, preschool, and government run schools here in the US is that, oh, don't homeschool, don't private school, because your kids need to be socialized better. And I think that's actually an intentional tool of the state, because if you look at the US right now, especially when it comes to government run schools, socialization has become the virtue, and not education, but socialization and influence and indoctrination. Which, if somebody wants to indoctrinate children, it should be me. I should be indoctrinating my own children, and I have no problem with people indoctrinating their own children. But when we leave socialization up to an educational environment, or even a social environment that's apart from the parents, I think we start to run into some risky territory. Do you do you see my point?
No, I totally get it. I would think the experience, boy, so much of it comes down to, really, it just comes down to if a parent's going to be involved in their kids' education, if your kids are going to school. Well, that's kind of one thing that I was surprised. You know, this caught me off guard. I know we talked about it, but when me and the wife were trying to figure out where to send our oldest, we saw the kids that were produced by um, by our best friend's Catholic school system, and wow, I was that. And James Lindsay's even talked about this, the Montessori method of teaching, which I didn't even know much about it. So we made our first, like our first choice on preschool for my son. We were pretty well informed, and we've got like a little public school like a little ways away, and just hearing from our friend about what they got out of the Catholic school system, and then reading more about the Montessori teaching method, I was really impressed, and gonna keep poking away at it this way. I straight up public school, boy, there's so much variance even between school boards. If it really does come down to the parents. The parents got to know what's going on in their schools, and that's kind of a neat thing. We get the regular email updates, you get the minutes of all the board meetings and stuff like that, and so far there hasn't been a whole bunch of that strange, really none of that strange,
Well,
that stuff.
you just wait. If it hasn't,
Oh
will,
yeah.
because it's all over the U.S. right now, and it's what's really ironic is that, and if you've been paying attention to my channel and over the last year, I did a lot of school board stuff over the summer and into the early fall. Oh, I lost him again. He disappeared. Anyway, I did a lot of that, and the parents were pushing back against socialization. Is really what they were pushing against. Was it an agenda? Was it critical theory? Sure. Was it social Marxism, Gramscian theory that they were pushing against? Absolutely, they were. But what it really came down to was socialization. And I asked this question on Facebook here a couple of weeks ago. I said, okay, so all of my conservative, Christian, and whatnot friends, who said kids need to be in government schools for socialization reasons, how's that working out for you? Because we're seeing the uptick in critical theory, critical sexual theory, critical race theory, and all these other things, and an advancement of an agenda in the school districts, bar none, across the United States, where school boards, by and large, are left leaning, and they do whatever they're told to do, and they're indoctrinating children. And I had Joshua Slocum from Disaffected on last week, and we talked about grooming. It's a reality. It's just a fact that's what's happening a lot. They are grooming students. And philosophically, you have to have some ground to stand on. I had Tomsky on here a few weeks ago, and Tomsky and I come from a different perspective ideologically and philosophically, but we both have some conservative traits and tendencies in common. And we are able to step up and say, and this is what Joshua said last week too, is that there are people within the world who just can't call anything evil or wrong. And he's an atheist, as is Tomsky, and capable of calling something wrong, calling something evil. And I think that's why I'm able to align myself with atheists and non-Christians who have had at least an objective standard of what is definitionally evil. And what we're seeing, especially through socialized medicine, through socialized education, is evil. It's indoctrination. And we have to be able to fight against it, but we have to have a standard by which we can call those things evil and consider them worthy of fighting against. Here's what I'm going to do. We're having some issues with connectivity with Kent. he's got a life to live. He's got young kids that he should probably be seen to. And I'm thankful for his time. I'm thankful for everybody watching. Uh, Once again, if you haven't had the opportunity to um, check into my Subscribe Star, I'm going to show it here for you again. I shared it in the chat a little bit ago. And I will put it in the chat again one more time. Kent's Kent. Yeah, that's fine. Don't worry. I'll wrap it up here. I would love to have you guys follow me on Subscribestar. There, like I said, there will be some exclusive content. I have an interview that I did with a gentleman from the southeast portion of the United States who's going off to the Ukraine to join the Ukrainian military in their fight against Russia. We are going to be, I'm going to be putting that out. I'm going to be working on putting out the chapters of at least a short story. Maybe it'll be a full length novel. I'll be putting that out for the subscribers on Subscribestar. And I want you guys to understand that I would like to have these conversations with people who are coming from either left or centrist position. And I love the way everybody is able to interact. That's why I like having some of the people on that I have on, because I know that we don't all come from the exact same ideological perspective, even though we share a lot of the same values. And I think that's going to be the great thing about the Discord server that I've launched. Tomsky is a moderator there, by the way, so come in and raise all sorts of hell. So Tomsky's busy, so check me out on Discord. You can find that Discord link through Subscribestar. If you like the content, if you've appreciated the content over the last couple of years, if you'd like to see it going, you'd like to see it get better, join Subscribestar. It's really simple. So we've got 4 different tiers right now. Might add a couple of more, but we've got 4 different tiers, and I would appreciate it because I kind of need it right now. Once again, if you're in the U.S., I can ship coffee. I can ship merchandise. Tomsky will figure out a way to get you coffee if we can figure out a way to do it where it doesn't kill us both financially. You can find me on Twitter at Robe Regiment. You can find me on Telegram, Minnesota First MBRR, or First Black Robe Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. I can't remember exactly what it is on there. TC Pearson on Facebook, or Minnesota Black Robe Regiment on Facebook. And I'm also have a Rumble channel going. TC Pearson at protonmail.com if you had questions or if you have anything you want to push back on. I appreciate every view. Channel's been growing. I think, let me check here. What am I at right now? Since I hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I have jumped up exponentially. I'm at 1,926. I'm almost at $2,000 in less than 2 months, or yeah, pretty much almost 3 months. So I've gained almost 1,000. I've gained over 900 subscribers in less than 3 months. For me, that's huge, and I appreciate every single one of you, and I'm thankful for every single one of you. And I cannot tell you enough how much I've appreciated all of the support and all of the well wishes and the super chats and whatnot, and the views and the comments. So keep it coming. And once again, please, 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 one, reach out to Kent and tell him how much you appreciate him making time for us and sharing his beautiful family with us. And to tune in on Tuesday night. Even my Friday night tights friends who normally watch the channel, please tune in on Friday night, the 23rd. Yeah. This coming Friday night, the 20th, excuse me, for Spike Cohen. I think it's going to be a great show, and I think it's going to be the start of something huge. I really want to start to explore the libertarian movement, and especially the conservative wing of libertarianism, as opposed to the more socialist wing of libertarianism. So make sure you tune in, share that around, and let me know if you have any questions you'd like me to ask Spike, and I will see what we can do to get him on there. So, my friends, until next time, thanks for tuning in, and Sic Semper Tyrannis.
We are go for lift off in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.